morning. We're going to go and get started. I figure if I start a little earlier every Sunday, we'll get to where we start at 10 a.m. one day. All right, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and jump into our area here of our class. We're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 6 this morning. 2 Samuel chapter 6, and it's verses 1 through 23, so just 23 verses, but there's quite a bit in here to cover. So before we do that, let's go ahead and jump into our questions. Questions start with, let me see, with Jesus. Jesus said that the Helper will not come to them, on talking to the apostles, until what? Until he leaves, exactly right. And we know he went up the clouds, as we see there in Acts 1. What will the Holy Spirit, the Helper, make known to the apostles? Anybody know that? All truth, exactly right. All truth. In other words, the Word of God, as we see we come to them. Next one, Jesus said that the Father loves the disciples because you have blank and blank. Love the disciples because you have first loved him. Anybody else? And what else? Believe. So as we see those two areas there. Next one. Moses told the Israelites who were camped by the Red Sea that blank would fight off the Egyptians. Who would do that? The Lord, exactly right. The Lord would do it. Exodus 14:14. How many Egyptian soldiers survived, basically the ones that went into the Red Sea to follow after Moses and them? None. None of them survived at all. And it's interesting how it says all those went in. So we don't know if there were some others that were outside of it, that maybe went back saying, you're not believe what just happened. Pharaoh's gone, and everybody. And we see that, of course, and that more than likely probably was the case that we see that. Next one. The young man from the camp of Israel did not tell David, A, he had escaped, B, the battle had gone well, C, many had fled and many were dead, or D, King Saul and Jonathan were dead. So what did not say? B, exactly right. The battle had not gone well at all for them whatsoever. Saul and the Israelites, they lost. That we see that there, which brings us to the next one. After King Saul died, what town did God instruct David to go? I heard it. Starts with an H. Hebron. To Hebron is where he went. He went to Hebron. Remember, he said you would go up to Judah, and told me, he said Hebron would be that where he would start. Remember, he was there for 7.5 years, ruling over Judah until he took over everything. And now we know that he is in Jerusalem as of Wednesday night. Our studies. In the contest between the 12 men of Abner and the 12 men of Joab, remember Abner is Saul's basically men, we would say, on that side, and Joab would be that of David's. Who won? They all died, exactly right. They just went boom one time, just stabbed each other, and they all died right there, all 24 of them. So at the end of the day, though, who had lost the most men? Abner's men, exactly right. So Saul's side, they had lost the most men. As we see there. After that fight, I think it was David and them lost, it was like another 4 or 6, something like it wasn't many at all, and we see that. And where he lost hundreds, Abner did. Why did Joab kill Abner?
Chasing after him.
So why did Joab kill Abner? Abner was the one that, because Abner had killed somebody. Who had he killed? Remember someone was chasing Abner, and Abner said, I'm telling you, you need to turn from me, you're going to die. So it was Joab's brother. And so we see there exactly that because he killed him, he wanted him dead also, and he did. So for revenge. Yes or no? Was David pleased with Abner, was David pleased that Abner had been killed? No, not at all. It wasn't happy whatsoever. In fact, we know he mourned over him. We see this. And what event caused Ishbosheth, king of Israel, to lose courage? What caused him to lose courage? What do you think? Anybody remember that? The event where Ishbosheth, king of Israel, lost courage? That he heard that Abner had been killed. And once he heard Abner had been killed, it really just, he just lost. And we know he didn't live much longer either. They snuck in to kill him. Yes or no? At the time that David became king, had Israel possessed the city of Jerusalem? No. My own part in there. Who possessed Jerusalem at this time? What were their names? Starts with J. Jebusites, exactly right. All right. How did David capture the city? How did he do it? He sent somebody up somewhere. Up through the water tunnel, exactly right, through the tunnels that go to the water that they received. Because Jerusalem, remember, you could basically stay within the walls for long, long amounts of time and be fine, but that's how they got in to get it. How did David defeat the Philistines? Each of the 2 times they came to the valley of Rephaim. Something David did each time, which he was really good at. He asked of the Lord of what he needed to do, and then the Lord took care of it. That's what we see, that God took care of it. Remember the mulberry bushes, he said the trees, and then it says the Lord went out before him and took care of that. So we have that. All right, so let's jump into where David brings the ark to Jerusalem. This is what we're dealing with this morning, that David's going to bring the ark to Jerusalem. And there's a lot in here. And, a lot of times we think David, raised, Israelite raised, understanding the Bible, understanding the Old Testament, that is the law, and the Torah, and knowing all that. But, if you're not still in it, you lose things. You forget things. Things maybe not have been reminded of you. And I believe that's what's going to happen. We're going to see with David here. He's only 30 years old, so he's still learning. Things are still coming to him. So we begin here, when we last left David on Wednesday night, he was secure in his position of king of all of Israel now. Israel and Judah, the kingdom is no longer divided. The nation had gathered themselves around him, anointed him to be their king. And while David was certainly grateful for the peace that existed now in Israel in those days, he knew that Israel was still far from where they needed to be. They needed to get closer to God. They needed to bring all of themselves back to God. And what we find there, remember, Israel itself, that was we see all those tribes right there, those 10 tribes, because he had the 2, of course, in Judah. They moved so far from God, and because their leader, Saul. So during the days of Saul, Israel lost that sight, and David wanted to make the situation right. He wanted to bring the people back to God the way they needed to be. And to do this, David understood that he knew he was going to have to lead the nation to go after God. Not to say, hey, here's God's what you do. They need to chase after him. They need to get him, and there's a way to do that. And that's where our passage is going to open up with David leading this massive army. As I stated Wednesday night, he has that we would call our special forces, about 30,000 elite men that he would take with him in places if he needed to fight. Those ones, the ones that would go. And he retrieved the Ark of the Covenant from the house name of Abinadab, is the name of the man who had it. David knew that Israel would never be where they needed to be if they didn't have the Ark of the Covenant. Remember what the Ark of the Covenant represented? It represented God, with them. And even though God has already done things with them, even without the Ark of the Covenant, this is what brings them back to the worship. This is what brings them back to where they need to be. So at this point, a little history regarding the Ark is in order, I believe, for us to get where we're at. The Ark of the Covenant was built at the command of the Lord. If we go all the way back to Exodus 25, I'll go and read this long reading. I'll read it real quick, 10 through 22, so just hold on. It says, and they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, inside and out. You shall overlay it, and shall make on it a molding of the gold all around. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in its 4 corners. 2 rings shall be on one side, and 2 rings on the other side. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. You shall put the poles into the rings of the sides of the ark, that the ark may be carried by them. Very important. The poles shall be in the rings of the ark, they shall not be taken from it. So in other words, it's always ready, prepared to go. To get out of where we need to go. And they were keeping there, even though that wasn't the case, we're going to see. And then it continues to go, and you shall put it in the ark, the testimony which I will put into the ark, the testimony which I will give you. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits, and be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And he continues, and you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, of hammered work. Those are like angels we read about in the Bible, Revelation. You shall make, and Daniel, you shall make them 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub at one end, and the other cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherub at the 2 ends of it of one piece with the mercy seat. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above the covering of the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. And then finally, you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim and are the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel. God gave a lot of detail. I mean, it's very detailed what to do, how to do it. You don't miss the point. Everything we see here. The ark, this is what it would have looked like without the staffs. You say without the poles that are in there right now. Give you a perception of it, as you can see, and notice how they are touching. He stated that and how they would be inlaid in the top all together. And then you go to the next one here, as we find this would actually be pictured with the staffs, with the poles. And as you notice, everything is inlaid in gold. The little leather they put around there, don't know if that's the fact or not. God doesn't talk about that. Said about everything in gold, but we're just going to leave the picture there as it is. The box, when you measure it, when you go away from the cubit size, remember cubit's about this length, toes. Those aren't my toes. From the finger right here, top, all the way here to my elbow. It would basically be 45 inches long, 27 inches wide, by 27 inches high. So it's not really that big. You know, it's not huge like some may think it was or so on. It had to be very easy to move, very easy to move around. We see. The box was overlaid in pure gold. Very important to get that. It was topped by a golden grate called the mercy seat. One either side of the mercy seat we said the two cherubims we saw there. Inside it, now we know later, inside it right now, he said put the 10 Commandments, basically the tablets. We also know there was an ark, was a golden pot of manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the 2 tablets of law that were given to Moses at Mount Sinai. It was here that God promised, of course, to meet with his people. It was here that the blood atonement was placed on the Day of Atonement. And everything we see is here. Remember, this had to do with, for a while there, it was in the tabernacle. When the temple's built, it'll be in the temple. It'll be in a place called the Holy of Holies, or the Most Holy. We see separated by a curtain. The ark was vital in worship of Israel. And it was symbolic of God's presence among his people. The ark has been gone for a long, long time by the Philistines taking it. It was often, we know, carried in battle, as we see here. Okay, I thought I did something there. Let me go back and look. Nope, guess not. Okay. It was often carried in battle in the front by the soldiers. As you see the staves again, we know that they would carry one on each end of it. And so you have a total of 4 carrying this into battle. And it would be at the front. And what would that represent with it being in the front?
God leading them.
God leading them, exactly right. And God with them and leading them, as we see in this whole moment. You see way back to the days of Eli, some 75 years earlier, the ark had been taken. So notice this, the ark's been gone way before David was even born. And, and we see that, at least 45 years. And so it's been gone for a long time. So really, when it comes down to it, Israel really hasn't been doing right for quite a while. What? Hadn't been worshiping God. Hadn't been worshiping God the way they're supposed to, the way we see things were set up. So with all that, 1 Samuel 4:11 mentions this about being taken. If someone go and read that for us, please.
Also, ark of God was captured, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died.
Thank you. So we see the death of Eli's 2 sons, and this deal with the high, we see with the priests and the high priest and everything that goes along with this. And the ark's stolen, and it's been gone, like we said, for 75 years. However, God punished the Philistines all that time. All that time. They didn't realize that's where it was coming from. They do in just a moment. They think that's where it is. But they've been, dealing with it ever since their possession. 1 Samuel 5 and 6 talk all about that. Their solution was to place the ark on a cart. We're like, we need to get rid of this thing. So we're going to go ahead and place this ark on a cart, on a new cart. This is the Philistines, what they are doing. And they're going to allow the cattle to pull the ark and take the box back to Israel. That's what they're hoping. Just take it on back. As we see this for 75 years, David is about to take Israel and lead them to go after God. That's what this is all about. We do not have an ark like Israel did. You and I, we don't worship like that. We don't have an ark that way. But we still need the presence of God in our lives. We need the presence of God in everything we do. And we do that with his word, through his word, praying to him, knowing that he's there, and taking care of us. We need God in us through his word, as we said, and everything we find. So the passage has something to say about the matter of going after God, not only for the Israelites, but what an example for you and I today. And, we see that we always have to be looking to God and going after him. So I want to talk about a couple of simple insights as we go through this. We're going to start with verses 1 and 2 of 2 Samuel 6, and this is the desire of David's heart. This is David's heart. Remember, David was one after the heart of God. And his desire was to make people come to God, come to the way they needed to be, and continue and find themselves back in the way that they should have always been. So let's go ahead and read this. So we'll go ahead and begin in verses 1 and 2, please.
Again, David gathered all the choice men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Belial, Judah, to bring up from the ark of God, whose name is called by the name the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim.
Thank you. So as we see this happening, even when this was written, 2 Samuel, look at it even talks about all the way back where God said he would be, between the cherubims, there with the mercy seat. This Beli, Judah, his location is right here. A lot of times you look on a map, you're not going to find it because it's not named that way anymore. It is now Kirjath Jearim. It's been that way for many, 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 many years. So it's right here in location. You see where it is from Bethlehem and Jerusalem. So this is where we find this happening at. And this is where this is taken back over here as we see that David is going to bring them in here. You notice it's a hilly country. It's not smooth or anything like that at all. So the roads back then, the roads aren't like ours. They're not paved. They're dirt and rock. So they're not going to be very They're not going to be very smooth. Exactly right. They're not going to be usable. They're usable, but they're not the greatest, we would say. So I want us to think about this for a moment before we get into this. When you think of David, what do you think about? There's usually a few things that we think of usually when we think about, and that is a lot of people probably think of David and his triumphal, fight against Goliath, and they think about David and Goliath. Others may remember David as the man who committed adultery, with Bathsheba. Maybe, do we remember his failures as a father? We saw many of those. We remember him as a humble shepherd, or remember David as the sweet singer of Israel who wrote many, 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 many songs, and sang before Saul several times. How does God remember David, though? We have all of our different ways, and here's what we understand when we find how God remembers David. Of course, in Acts chapter 13, verse 22, given to us, where Paul quotes God saying these words. So we're going to read this for us, please.
I found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, who will do all my will.
Thank you. And the other day, a couple classes back, I talked about David with his wives, and we go, how are you, a man after God's own heart? Do you have that where many sins? David sinned. We all sinned, and we see some of the sins he continued in them. But here it is how do you call the man after his heart? He did how much of the will of God? All. So basically what he's saying is everything God told him, I need you to go do this, I need you to go do that, I need you to go do this. David did it. And remember, God worked like that a lot back in the Old Testament. We see that with Noah, we see that with Moses, we see that with Abraham. Same thing as we see all through those. So as we look at this here, we need to realize that God remembers David as a man who cared about the things that God cared about, who loved what God loved, who hated what God hated, and whose heart basically beat with God's, is what we see taking place here. So with this happening, I want us to think about this. There's a couple aspect of David's character is revealed in the desire of David's heart. And the first one is that David possessed a holy desire. Meaning, we hear the word holy. Holy means what to you and I today? To me, exactly. We're set apart. We're different from the world. We're set apart from the work of the Lord. And that's what we see with David also. David's desire is clear and very simple in this moment, is what I'm talking about right now. He wants the ark returned to its place as the centerpiece worship of the devotion of basically in Israel. He wants God placed back in the center of the national consciousness. He doesn't want anybody going anywhere in Israel, Judah, all that together, not thinking about God. He said that's what he wants everything to happen. So David was seeking to unify a formerly divided nation, and he was doing it under God, and he was doing it as God is the centerpiece. So in other words, he's like, everything we're doing here isn't about you and I. It's all about God. And that's what we find with David in this moment. So David's desire of God's presence would bring about God's blessings upon Israel, upon this country that we see during that time. Another one to think about is that David possessed an honest desire. David was motivated by no ulterior motives. Remember, a lot of times when kings came to control, they came to basically do basically they did what they wanted to be done, is the way they looked at it. Didn't matter what anybody else told them, their word was always first and last. And David was just the opposite. It was supposed to be God first and last. Even though we see David mess up a couple times, but of course he brings himself back to God. He was not after glory or power. David merely wanted to see God restored to his people. And David's seen this. You know, David saw when God was not in the proper place of your heart, he saw what happened to everybody. Israel, remember, God's chosen people. David saw under Saul that Israel did not, prosper. Things didn't go well for them. And it's because they were being led by an evil man at that point where Saul had left God. And a lot of the majority of Israel had done the same. Another thing, David, we also understand, possessed a humble desire. A humble desire. David knew that neither he nor Israel would amount to anything without the presence and power of God in them. David knew they did not possess the power or the ability to defend for themselves. They needed God. David saw it. David look at the history. All of Israel could look at the history. When God was with them, they were doing good. When God was without them, they were doing what? Not good. They were doing poor. They were doing bad. I mean, there's just no way around it. So as we think about this here, just let me say this, that we need hearts like those which God would want us to. And in respect of the areas of David that he did good in. God wants us to be like that. A heart that beats for God. And that's really how we can think about it. So to learn this lesson, we know that we can do nothing without God. In fact, John mentioned this in John chapter 15, verse 5, about the vine and the branches. Someone go and read this for us, please.
I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. But without me, you can do nothing.
Thank you. Now this, of course, David didn't have this, but basically the Old Testament talked about just the same thing, not with the vine and branches, but knowing that you can do nothing without God. And we see this is for us today, just as much for the apostles back then. But we also see verses like this, like 2 Chronicles 7:14, that David without a doubt would have understood. Well, we see this is aptitude, but so if someone go ahead and read this for us, please.
If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land.
Thank you. Here's God basically saying, if you want things to go right, you need to come to me. And you need to be a part of me. Some would say, what gives God the right of asking all that of us? Well, number one, God created each and every one of us. And that's the way it's going to be. That's the way it needs to be. And we see that. So without God, we're nobody. We wouldn't even be here on this earth. We wouldn't be in earth with everything with it. So, may God grant us, hearts that are hungry for him, just like it's talking about here. That was David's desire in this moment to get the ark back, is that he wanted all of Israel to hunger for God just like he was. And he would start by this major event of returning the ark. So as we look at this, we get to this next point in verses 3 through 10, the disappointment of David's heart. Something's going to take place here, and it is going to disappoint David. And we'll talk about it when we get to it. A lot of people say David got angry with God. I don't believe that's the case at all. And I'll show you what I mean by that as we get into this moment of Cedartown. So let's go ahead and, let me see here. Go ahead and begin by reading. No, we'll get to that in just a second. David's motives, of course, bringing the Ark of Jerusalem were proper, but his methods were faulty. Let me just say that. It was proper the way he wanted to do it, but his methods were faulty. He left off something very, very important, and we all know about what we're already talking about. David's methods of transporting the Ark resulted in the death of a human being, and that was what we say, Uzzah, when he touched the Ark of the Covenant. A lot of people don't understand why God did this, why this happens. It wasn't that God did it. God had talked about this, made this command many, many, many years before this, of what was needed to be done. And it comes down to David, basically. So verse 8, we see David is going to get angry. We'll come back to 3 through 7 and talk about those. But let's begin here. So we'll go and read verse 8.
And David became angry because of the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah. And he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day. Thank you.
So verse 8, we see created fear with David's heart toward the Lord. And people say, the way it reads, it sounds like David's angry with God. It's not the way it reads in the Hebrew, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But let's look at verse 9. So we'll go and read verse 9 also.
David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, how can the ark of the Lord come to me?
Thank you. So as we take a moment to examine David's disappointment a little more closely to seek to determine what caused his plan to fall apart, brings us back to Uzzah. With this is what happens. David, in this point, when you read this in Hebrew, he's mad at himself for not knowing what the law required. He's mad at himself for not knowing what God expected. And because of that, the way it reads, it sounds like he's mad at God because God killed him. He's mad that this happened without a doubt. He's angered that Uzzah died. But he's more angry at himself. That's why in verse 9, he was afraid. He was afraid that God made what might happen to David because he made such a big mistake. But we see God is willing to get David right. And so David's main thing is he wanted to ask God, what do I got to do? How do I get the ark of the Lord to come to me? How am I going to make this happen? Well, to do this, let's go back to verse 3. We see it was created by a faulty decision, of course, as we read in verse 3. If someone go ahead and read that for us, please.
So they set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and husband and Ohio, the sons of
Benedad.
Abinadab, there you go. Thank you. Drove the new cart.
Thank you. You know how I got that set up so I read it properly? I have A-BIN-A-B-A-B, and Abinadab. Because it doesn't run together for me there. If you're looking at it reading fast, it's like, what was that word? The Bible says that they set the ark of God on a new cart. Sort of like, hey, it's a brand new car, everything's good, it's probably going to ride well. Remember, the roads aren't what? Not level, not smooth. You're going to have some things moving around. Remember, this cart isn't that big. Someone say, well, the thing must weigh a ton because it's made of gold. It's not made of gold. Remember, it's made of a K of wood. It's just what with gold? Just overlaid. It actually uses the word overlaid with gold. So very thin. I would think of that like the old style formica, that was used to put over the top of countertops and so on. Just a little layer there. Or you see it a lot of times nowadays, they're even doing that over wood quite a bit. So David's first problem was rooted in the fact that he either forgot or he ignored the clear command of God as to how the ark was to be transported, or he just never knew. No one ever told him this part as we see this happening. And that could have been the case. I don't believe David ignored God. I don't think that's what that is at all here. It's either he forgot or he didn't know. But I would say this too. How would you forget something so big when you see the rings right there and everything with it? And that's where I'm thinking David's not just really truly aware of what needed to be done. The ark was to be lifted by me. And the reason I say that too is because in verse 9, what we read just a minute ago, he asked what? How do I what?
How do I get it?
How do I get it to me? How is this to be done? That's why I see that. The ark was to be lifted by means, of course, 2 golden staffs we said before. Let's go ahead and read it here. Here it is again, as you see they would carry this. In Exodus chapter 25, verses 14 through 15, it tells us also there. We already saw a moment ago, but it tells us here too. If someone go and read this for us, please.
You shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark, that the ark may be carried by them. The poles shall be in the rings of the ark. They shall not be taken from it.
Thank you. So very important, the poles must not have, the poles could have been there without a doubt, and they just didn't grab them, as we see here. And that's another reason behind this one, I think, with David, or they could have been to the side, whichever it may be. But God made it very clear with everything happening here. And, and it says the ark may be carried by them. What we know from the Bible, from Numbers, chapter 3, chapter 14, chapter 7, is that they were the family of the Levites known as the Kohites. They were the ones that would carry the ark. They were the only ones that would carry the ark, as we see. David made good plans, good preparation, but he neglected to do it in God's way, as we said. This is what I believe is such a great opportunity for us to think as Christians today. There are a lot of people who think they're serving God properly, worshiping God, looking to God. Even Jesus tells us, he makes it very clear in Matthew 7, there are those that said, we did this in your name. We did so many things for you. It was all about you. And Jesus says, what to them? Depart from me, you that work iniquity. In other words, I don't know you. And we see that and see this is the same thing we see happening here. So for us today, people say, oh, God's not going to be that way. God is very much that way. He expects us to do it exactly as he says by following his word. So another flaw also that was a bad choice on David's decision is the fact that, number one, this is it just blows our mind because David's been so good at it up to this moment. What should have David done before he even tried to get the ark back to where he wanted to, there in David's city? Should have prayed to God, should have asked God. You think God would have told him what he needed to do? Without a doubt. And that's why I get at this, it's like, I think the only thing I think, and I'm very careful, I don't want to put words into David or in the Bible, I'm not going to do that, but as us as humans, we get so excited about something, so ready to do it, get it done, and this is what more than likely happened to David, and he just went about and thought nothing of it. And especially knowing where it was able to get it, but he needed to have the guidance. Time and time again, David asked the Lord for help. For some reason, he just didn't do it this time. Another problem David has at this methods were the same methods that he had been used to by the world. The way the world did it. How did the Philistines move the ark? Same way, on a new cart, right? They did it on a new cart, we see, and they wanted to return it to Israel. They had placed it this way. 1 Samuel chapter 6, verses 7 through 15. I'll go ahead and read these. Now therefore make a new cart, take 2 milk cows. This is what they're telling them to do, which have never been yoked, and hitch the cows to the cart, and take the calves home, away from them. Then take the ark of the Lord, set it on the cart, and put the articles of gold, which are returning to him as a trespass offering, in a chest. Notice, in a chest by its side. Then send it away and let it go. In other words, they're like, we don't just want to return this, we want to return also a gift, with this. It says, and watch if it goes up the road to its own territory. This is the Philistines moving it on to Beth Shemesh. Then he has done us this great evil. But if not, then we shall know that it is not his hand that struck us, it happened to us by chance. They're talking about the 75 years of pain and suffering the Philistines have gone through. The destruction, different things that happened. They're saying, if it stops, it was because of this ark. If it's not, well, then it was just by chance. It says, then the men did so. They took the 2 milk cows, hitched them to the cart, and shut up their calves at home. And they set the ark of the Lord on the cart, and the chest with the gold rats and images of their tumors. This is dealing with the stuff of their gods and so on. I wonder about this sometimes. People have asked me this before. How did the Philistines put it on the ark? On the cart. Because if they do what?
Touch it.
If they touch it, and the Bible says there's only certain people that are allowed to touch the staves even, we don't know. Maybe a couple of times they tried, and what happened to each person? Boom, boom, they die. And they finally figure out a way to, without touching it, maybe a rope or something. But it's there. Let's go and continue to read. As I said, we go on. There we go. Then the cows headed straight for the road of Beth Shemesh and went along the highway, lowing as they went, and did not turn aside to the right hand or the left. And the lords of the Philistines went after them to the border of Beth Shemesh. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and they lifted their eyes and saw the ark, and rejoiced to see it. This is Israelites. Then the cart came into the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh, and stood there. A large stone was there. So they split the wood of the cart, and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord. Very important. So now we see who's doing it right, of the Lord, and the chest that was with it, in which were articles of gold, and put them on the large stone. Then the men of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices the same day to the Lord. So we see this is how it got there. This is what's happening to this point. As we see, we'll get to Uzzah in just a moment. Which brings us now, of course, verses 4 and 7, caused by foolish disobedience on David's part. And this is what we need to understand. Even if you do something because you're just ignorant of it, you don't know. We know Paul with God under the law of Christ, and we see that and understand. He said he did everything in all ignorance. He still paid for those things. He still, a lot happened to Paul because of the way he treated the Christians. But God did forgive him. Same thing here with David. David's going to make a mistake. He's going to pay for it, but God will forgive him for the things of not making a choice maybe to understand exactly what needed to be done. And all that would have been taken care of by just talking to God. Then go ahead.
Even our laws today, the judge will say, ignorance is no excuse.
Yep. I didn't know I was doing 100 miles an hour down the highway. Really? You didn't see the going, you couldn't read your speedometer? No, I was going too fast. No, I just didn't see it. You think about it, it's exactly right. We see the same thing today. So as we look at this here, let's go ahead and read verses 4 through 7 and find out what's happened here for the first 2 miles of their journey. 2 miles. Notice that. 2 miles is all we see here in this journey when this happens. So we're going to read for us verses 4 through 7, please.
And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, accompanying the ark of God, and Aho went before the ark. Then David called all the house of Israel, played music before the Lord on all kinds of instruments of fir wood, on harps, on stringed instruments, on tambourines, on sistrums, and on cymbals. When they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error, and he died there by the ark of God.
All right, so here I didn't, I should have given you a picture. I've done it before of what the threshing floor looks like. Remember, it's just a smoothed out area. Later over time, it would be that with some type of concrete, but not concrete, different mixture. It may be harder dirt, and it would be a circle area, and that's where they would thresh everything. So at the same time, it would be it could be slippery. And when we see with cattle, you know, anybody that's seen cattle before go from dirt, you know, to anything like asphalt or to concrete, you see it just a second. It could catch them off guard as we see this here. So this is what's going to happen here. At this point, of course, they're going along and they stumble. And what does Uzzah do? Uzzah reaches out his hand. I've always looked at this sense. You know, if you're walking next to something and it starts to come towards you, what are you going to do? Yeah, you're going to try to stop it, or even just the reaction of putting your hand up and getting hit by what it may have been. Uzzah reached his hand out to steady the ark, and when he did, bam, he died. And we see that. Now, as we think about this, it's really important. Do you think God, you know, how important the ark was? I'm going to tell you right now, what we hear about God, we read about God in the Bible, God would not allow that ark to hit the ground. It just wasn't going to happen. And we see this here. But in this moment, you know, this is a bad thing that's killed, but also at the same time, it's a very, very, very important lesson that we see here. The ark was not only supposed to be carried on the shoulders, we said, of the Kohites, it was never, ever, ever to be touched by any human hands whatsoever once it was placed into operation to start working. How do we know that? Well, Numbers chapter 4, verse 15. Someone go and read that for us, please.
Aaron and his sons have finished building the sanctuary and all the finishes of the sanctuary which the camp is set to go. Then the sons of Caleb shall come to carry them, but they shall not touch any holy things, lest they die. These things in the tabernacle of the meeting which the sons of Caleb are to carry.
Thank you. So, as we know, touching the ark, right about the death of Uzzah, he learned that very quickly, and so did David. And, you know, David really, when we look at this, like I said, he's angry with himself because he just caused a what? He caused the death. He did. It's, you know, you're the leader, David. You're the one that should know these things. He's the one that's having to go after the cart. And they'd only gone 2 miles. 2 miles is all they moved at this point, and this happened. So in these verses, you know, it teaches us anything. They teach us that God is very, very, very interested in the details. And we need to get that. God is, you know, we may think God does not care about the little things in life, but he does. He cares about every little thing in this life, everything we do, everything we're part of. In fact, God says he knows us so well, he knows how many what we have on our head. How many hairs? I mean, I don't think you get any more detail than that. Yeah, I know every day mine probably changes. But we see this and understand how this is here. So as we look at this, you know, the best thing, you know, a child of God needs to do in these points with David is align himself with God and do what needs to be done. Micah 6:8, I don't have the time to read all this, so I'm just about out of time. We see it's culminated also in a fleshly display, verses 8 through 10. I'll go ahead and read this real quick. And David became angry because of the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day. David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, how can the ark of the Lord come to me? So David would not move the ark of the Lord with him into the city of David. But David took it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. So he's thinking now. Now he's getting smart. He's doing the way things need to be. He's acting a little better. You know, saying, I am not going to move this on my own without God, you know, instructing it how it would be. This is the place where it is, Perez Uzzah. You can see right from Jerusalem. This is where it started. It's about a 3 mile, you see, area. So they're about 2 miles. This is another area of understanding basically the route of the ark over the years. We see where it came down to here. As you find Right here, here's Kirith Jearim, what we talked about. And here's the house of Obed-Edom. It spends 3 months there. 3 months! Takes David 3 months. He leaves it there. So it's not like this is overnight or anything as we see this happening. Which brings us now to the devotion of David's heart. And I have 30 seconds. The devotion of David's heart, verses 11 through 19. As we get to this, let me go and read, let me go and just read through these real quick. And we begin verse 11, 12. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Notice what happened. The ark's there, they're getting blessed. And then he says, now it was told to David, saying, the Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom, and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of the God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with gladness. So now he does it the right way. And we see the change of David's approach. And so it was when those bearing the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces that he sacrificed oxen and fatted sheep. Notice, they're going 1, 2, up to 6. Let's stop. Let's sacrifice to God. In other words, they're showing we're doing everything as God, for God. This is all with him. They're showing that we do not want to do this on our own. And then also, for because you did not do it the first time, the Lord our God broke out against us, because we did not consult him about the proper order. So the priests and Levites sanctified themselves to bring up the ark of the Lord, the God of Israel. And the children of Levites bore the ark of God on the shoulders by its poles, as Moses had commanded, according to the word of the Lord. And then finally manifested a change of David's actions. Then David danced before the Lord of his might, and David was wearing a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord, shouting with the sound of the trumpet. Now as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, which is David's other wife, looked through a window and saw King David leaping, and very important to understand these words, King David. She had leaping and whirling before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And then it goes on to say, so they brought the ark of the Lord and set it in the place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had erected for it. Now he's doing things right. Then David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And when David had finished offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. I just want to say something real quick. Let me finish it. Then he distributed among all the people, among the whole multitude of Israel, both the women and the men, and everyone loaf of bread, a piece of meat, and a cake of raisins. So all the people departed, everyone to his house. They're all happy, excited. There's a lot going on here with Michal and ephod as we see it. This is what an ephod is right here. It wouldn't have been one like this. This is what the high priest wears. I want to show you how far down it usually extends. It said that David wore that. We know we go on farther that it says that his Michal, as we said here, despised him. She basically, when you read it there, it sounds almost like David's wearing nothing but this ephod. That's not the case at all. Because she says you were showing all the women, young women and so on and all this and everything. What Michal gets mad at, and you can go back and read this, please go read the rest of this chapter. She's mad because David basically humbled himself to be like a regular everyday peasant, a regular everyday person is what it was, and she got mad about that, angry about it. And some try to say David was just out there wearing nothing at all but the ephod. That's not the case. He got rid of his royal clothes. That's why in that where you saw King David, she wanted to make sure you knew that. They got rid of the royal and basically saying, look, I am first and foremost not a king before God. I am a servant. Who is my king? God. And that's exactly what we see throughout that whole story, what David's doing. So I'm out of time. I'm actually 3 minutes over. Let me find my little thing here. All right. So we'll go ahead and close there. Appreciate your time, everybody, and we'll close there. Thanks.